My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Can an NDE, near-death experience, open a portal to our understanding of the afterlife? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, author, speaker, and personal development workshop creator and trainer Stephen Chong, had an NDE in 2019 that opened his awareness of what happens when we leave this earthly plane. Stephen's unique talent as a storyteller are exemplified within his first 6 novels as he enables readers to build a bridge to their fullest potential through the gift of story. He lives with his family in far north Queensland, Australia. His website is stephenchong.com.au, and he joins me this week to share his experience and just published book, The Afterlife, A Journey to. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Stephen Chong. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning, or good evening, Victor. Morning where I am, but thank you for having me on your program.
My pleasure to have you. Stephen, please share with our listeners your early path and how it led to the work and wisdom you bring to our world.
Oh, my goodness. Where does one start? My background, Victor, I'm an author of some 6 books now, but about just over 3 years ago, I had what you would certainly call a profound awakening experience. I'd stopped writing. I'd had enough. I'd said to the universe, I'm done. I'm getting old. I'm grey-haired and blah, blah, blah. So I'd stopped.
Now, my understanding is you didn't start writing till you were 50. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And what had you been doing prior to that time, sir?
Victor, I've been an educator, a trainer of people, a coach over the years. But say now one enters the twilight of one's life. And now it's just books, and particularly this latest one, The Afterlife.
Now, you used to create workshops. Tell us about those workshops.
Oh yes. One of the inherent talents that I have is to be able to design coaching and training for people and personal development, help them grow. That's been a part of my DNA for 30 years. So, and the books, as you mentioned, started when I was 50. So that I was a late bloomer from a writing point of view.
Absolutely. Let's actually share with us some of your earlier books and screenplays, a little of each, and what inspired them before we talk about your new book. So let's talk about the Book of Testaments, a practical guide for spiritual realization, which was written in 2009.
Oh, my goodness. You know, it's Victor, you know yourself when you write a book, it's like giving birth to a beautiful child. But I look back on my earlier works with, I've got to tell you, with a bit of a cringe. I think, oh, my God. My goodness, where did that come from? But ultimately, each of the books I've written are for people to recognise their own truth, to give them the way withal, some ideas, some tips that I know work, and then they can include in their own life to make life a better place for them. I mean, that's my DNA. That's been part of me for
And
forever.
after the Book of Testaments, The Music of the Soul, a pathway to a rich and fulfilling life?
Yes. I tell you a story with that. It's very interesting. I was about, as I recall, about a third of the way through that book, writing of that book. And I got this image in my head of 2 ducks sitting on a pond talking to one another. And I go, where does this come from? But I learned to trust those images. And I just listened to the dialogue of these 2 ducks talking to one another. And that that image and what the ducks, their whole story unfolded, and it unfolded into the next book and the one after that, and into 2 or 3 screenplays that I'd written. So that simple image of these ducks sitting on a pond evolved into this wonderful story of generations of ducks and their families and their trials and their tribulations.
I must ask you, do Australian ducks speak with an Australian accent?
I hope not. I would assume, Victor, that my accent is not too troubling.
No, not at all. I'm just being funny. That's all. We're trying to be funny and failing miserably. So we're not going to go down that
very
route.
good.
And then came Letters Across Time, A Journey of Enlightenment.
Yes. And that book, Victor, was again based on the continuum of the story of the 2 ducks, and was profoundly based on loss and grief and how to cope through the loss of blessed children and death, basically how to manage that grief process. But the interesting thing is, Victor, as we'll talk about with the latest book, a lot of this stuff I don't know where it comes from. It's kind of just there. It comes out. And they're divine gifts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So now in 2019, you had a near-death experience. Please share with us what happened.
Oh, my goodness. You can't see, Victor, but just behind me, and it's what you do when you get into your 60s, is you get up on the roof and you clean out the gutters. So I'm a bit...
I'm 70 and I do the same thing, so I got
see, there you go. Look, if I ever did it again, it wouldn't be a near-death experience. It would be a death experience because my wife would kill me.
Absolutely.
But I'm 5 meters above ground and the ladder slipped. And I'm in a crumpled mess on the ground. The ladder's gone through all these louver windows we have on the side of the house, and I'm on the ground and I can't feel anything. I'm sort of numb from neck down. And I thought, I'm in trouble here. But most fortunately, and this particular morning, my wife was here. And now we're very remote where we are. There's nobody, no near neighbours, 300 or 400 metres away is the closest one. So if my wife wasn't here on that morning, I would not be sitting here talking to you. It'd be all over. Here we stand, and I'd fractured my neck, and I was 3 or 4 months in rehabilitation, not good for anything much except lying on a couch. But that's when let's call them the revelations started to write this book, The Afterlife. I had the title going through my head, and I thought, no, leave me alone. I'm done. I don't want to do anymore. But the universe has their want that was so compelling. And I said, okay, whatever it is you want me to write, I'm in. I'll do it. But you have to show me. The afterlife, what do I know? I know nothing. But, Victor, after I bought into that process, I sat with fingers on keyboard. Okay, sure, I'm listening. I started to see, and I heard the music, saw the colours, and this is all in heaven, so it's all going on upstairs. But I'm seeing through this character's eyes what he's seeing in heaven. It was akin to a scenic railway tour through the heavenly realms. So I'm seeing through this character's eyes where he's taking me. It was extraordinarily profound.
And would you say that this was a channeled work?
Victor, I've been asked that a number of times. I don't sit comfortably with channeling. I'm just a regular dude, I have certain gifts but it was was akin to tuning in. It's like a frequency dial on a radio. I would sit, I would listen, I would trust implicitly that the words would come. See, there was no storyboard, there was no structure. I just sat, and each time I sat, I sort of tuned in, cut out distractions. I knew that the words would be there, the divine would provide. That was inherent. And every time I sat, it came through. The next bit came through. I had no idea where we were going. No idea where we were going.
So you would say this was an inspired work?
Oh yes, a great gift, Victor. Absolutely, and one that I'm eternally grateful for. But the key was the sort of saying yes to the divine. Yes, I will do this, and then the gifts were provided. If that makes sense. I mean, I guess some people could call it mediumship or channeling. I guess you could. The words are even are kind of archaic, Gothic in many ways. So it's not me writing. It's not the way I speak and the way I think. But that's I just was taking dictation basically from what I saw and heard.
You know, I share that experience with you. I've had this thing throughout my life. I did not have a near-death experience in the way that you did. But the sense that every time I've had a message and said yes to that message, and I'm not claiming the source is my source, whatever it might be, you know, I think of the source as the divine. But every time I said yes, the next door would open, and yes, and the next door would open. And
Isn't
by
that
acknowledging,
fantastic?
by acknowledging those messages,
Yes.
the things that started proceeding and following were just marvelous and wonderful, and all of them had purpose.
Yes. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, that's it. That describes it exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about some of the things that happened when you had that experience and some of the things that came through you. First of all, tell our listeners how you wrote this book, the way the story is told.
Okay. So I'm telling. So as I mentioned before, I'm seeing through this main character's eyes. So he's taking me through these different levels of heaven. I'm just describing what I'm seeing and hearing and feeling. But the main character, just as a bit of background, he, as a child, this character was abused under the auspices of the clergy, and a little bit later in life, he took his own life, and he was stuck in these mists, purgatory. Let's call them the mists. So he's stuck there by virtue of his anger, his grief, and his shame, consequential of his life. So he was stuck there, and he, by virtue of the relationship he formed with the bishop of the see under whose insouciance he was abused, and the forgiveness of one another, that released them both from this purgatory. And then both characters evolved through the heavenly realms. And this character was first, he was stuck in these mists, this purgatory, and then released by virtue of the forgiveness he was able to offer a significant other. So that's how it starts. But Victor, I've got to tell you something really interesting. And you know, when you write a book and when you write it and you edit it and you read it 100 times, it was some months after I finished the writing process, and you know, these voices in my head saying, "Stephen, you need to read this thing again. You're missing something." I go, "Oh, what the?" So I read it again. This time with, I guess, more open eyes. And what I discovered in the body of the text, embedded in some of the text, were these laws of heaven and earth, laws by which we can live by. And I thought, wow, this is far out. And I found 15 of them. which was quite amazing. But as I say, this is 2 or 3 months after the book had been completed.
And we're going to discuss those laws a little later on in the in the interview. But let's talk now a bit about purgatory. What was purgatory like? What was that like?
Oh, my goodness. Let me give you the best, I'll describe what I saw. So the characters are so we pass through, upon death, the silver cord that connects us, our physical body, to the eternal soul is severed. So we can't return, unlike an NDE, where, of course, that cord is not allows us to come back and report back. But upon death, we pass into these mists, or this purgatory, and therein lies the time of our life review. So we are confronted with the self. The law of cause and effect comes into play. So what we have done to our fellow man causes to affect where we go in heaven. So it's the mirror of reflection, that life review, where we see what we've done and how we've affected and influenced others. The other thing I understand about this purgatory is one of the laws is the emperor wears no clothes. So whatever your station, we've been king or prince or pauper, matters not. It is what we have done to others that determines our place in heaven, and the road we take, which is really, I'm seeing all of this stuff as I'm writing it. But the other thing that I saw, if you can imagine these beautiful mists, and souls are exiting these mists and moving into heaven. And what I saw was that these souls are clothed in these multi-hued coloured robes. And if you could multiply by 10 the colours of the rainbow. So some souls are exiting these mists with these beautiful, bright, golden white robes, like neck to toe robes. This is what I was seeing. And others were, how would I describe, like dark Hessian, not black, but really darkened robes. And the colour, as I understand it, the colour of the robes describes the road you take into the heavenly realm. So if one is clothed in golden white orbs, then obviously you move up. If your robes are somewhat darker, then it's a path uniquely yours. No other can intervene. You have to follow the path as designated coming through these mists of purgatory.
It almost sounds like the color of the robe, for example, the white and gold versus the dark, is a higher frequency. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely. What I saw in one instance was a character coming through these mists, and she was dressed in dark Hessian brown colours, and she tried valiantly by, I guess she was somewhat deluded. She thought she was quite angelic or divine, and she tried to move up these roads into these higher echelons, but she couldn't. It was not permitted. She had to follow the road as designated by her life review in the miss. The analogy for me, Victor, comes is like Jesus, the Grand Master, said, "I go to prepare a house for you." That analogy for me says, what you've done in your life determines your where you go in heaven. And it's not, to me, what I understood, it is not eternal, but rather the judgment of the mists or heaven is not vindictive or eternal, but probationary and remedial. So we continue to evolve in whatever level we go to.
You know, it's an old
That,
story, an old humorous story that I heard many years ago about this very, very pious religious figure, a priest or someone, a religious leader, and he transitions and he's met at the gates of heaven by
mm,
St. Peter. And St. Peter says, "Welcome to heaven. We've been expecting you. You're such a wonderful, wonderful man, and you've led such an exemplary life. And I'm going to escort you to your heavenly home." And he
mm.
takes him to this little humble cottage. And he opens the door, and it's very ornate and beautiful, but very small and very comfortable. And then the priest looks up the hill, and he says, "Listen, I'm not complaining or asking or measuring myself against anything else or anyone else. But who's that mansion belong to up the hill?" And he said, St. Peter says, "That's a lawyer's home. We have so few up here that we give them guest houses." My guest is
So
Stephen
there you
Chong.
go.
My
We've missed
guest
that.
is
We've missed that calling, haven't we?
We missed that calling. That's correct. My guest is Stephen Chong. His book is called The Afterlife, A Journey To. Stephen, please tell our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Victor, thank you. As I understand it now, the Kindle version of the book is available on Amazon, so people can get on there and just Google the Afterlife, A Journey To, and you'll find it. The paperback hardcover version is coming out on the 26th of May. So I guess that's probably the best place for people to access the book, or they can get onto my website, which is www.stephenchong, Stephen with a PH, chong.com.au. And yeah, there's links on there that people, again, can access their purchase.
And we'll be back with more of Stephen and The Afterlife, A Journey To, after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What Is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Fuhrman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice. Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Stephen Chong. His book is called The Afterlife, A Journey To. So you and I are stuck in purgatory. Tell us about life reviews. Do you have life reviews in purgatory?
Yes, indeed we do. What I saw there, Victor, as mentioned, is this is where the laws of heaven, or one of the laws of heaven, come into play. Is what you sow, so shall you reap, and what you have done to another, you do to yourselves, because we are one in spirit. You and I are one in spirit. So if I do something bad to you to cause you some harm, then I need to look in that mirror of reflection. I'm pretty sure that's the way well, that's what I saw, and that's the way it works. And then upon exiting these myths into heaven, we are, as mentioned before, we are robed in these colours that determine our station within the levels of heaven. And as I understand it, that other souls can look at these colours of our robes and know exactly what our needs are to love and nurture and support that particular soul. So, and again, was quite a profound experience to see and experience all of this.
Absolutely. Are there people who get stuck there? You talked about the ones in the darker robes. Do they stay there longer, or do they advance?
Yes, I think that's absolutely correct. This particular character through whose eyes I'm seeing, he, by virtue, as I mentioned before, by virtue of his anger and his guilt and his shame, what happened in his life, he was stuck in these myths, in this purgatory, and it was only the levels of forgiveness he could find in himself that released him into the wider levels of heaven. Forgiveness was the key. Forgiveness was the absolute key that unlocked his ability to move through into the higher levels of heaven.
And that forgiveness was self-forgiveness.
Yes, and forgiveness of others. He as the story evolved, he was able to forgive the other character. Main character was the bishop of the see, who presided over the abuse in the clergy. So he was able to forgive this character for his negligence, and that released him to these higher levels of heaven.
So in essence, the golden rule, which is found in Judaism and Christianity and Islam and the iterations of a similar vein in other faiths and religions, if everyone practiced that, then there would be no need for purgatory.
How fantastic is that? Yes. If one knew the consequences, the eternal consequences of one's actions in life, to know that you would go through these, what you have caused to affect another. If I do bad things to you, I've got to know that that doesn't fall upon you; it falls upon me. I've got to wear the consequences of those actions. So if one knows that, that's got to turn us from errant action, surely, doesn't it? To give pause to anything that was going to hurt somebody else.
Before we leave purgatory, I have to ask if you're willing to share what your faith base was prior to this experience.
It's a very interesting question. How do I answer it? I guess I consider myself well connected spiritually. I've been gifted. My mother just passed last week.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes, it was quite traumatic, but she was the guiding light and a gift beyond measure for my spiritual progress, put it that way. But I'm not linked into any particular faith or creed or religion. No, but spiritually attuned, yes, absolutely.
And as I shared, if everyone followed that basic rule, and what a world we would be, and there'd be no reason for purgatory.
Well, there you go. Isn't that amazing? Yes.
Absolutely.
Just by living by these simple rules, it changes our outlook.
So we've practiced forgiveness, we've departed purgatory, and then a series of regions ensue. Please tell us about the healing arena.
Oh, my goodness. Oh. I want you to picture the Colosseum in Rome. Again, this is what I'm seeing. So I'm walking towards this huge auditorium, this Colosseum, and it is filled with so many souls, multicolored hues, colors beyond the imagine, and they're chanting. It's the Om sound, and it's reverberating around this arena. Now, and in the middle of this arena sit these recliner lounges, and in walks these seraphim angels, and they're in charge of these decrepit souls. They're deformed and disabled, and they are brought onto these lounges, and these lounges kind of mould into the soul. Now, mind you, I'm just seeing all this in writing. This is what I'm seeing. And into the middle then of this arena comes this angelic being, just beautiful white and gold. And he lifts his hands up and he starts to mould the energy of the chant of all the souls in this arena. And it's like he's holding his hands up and he's got this ball of energy that's spinning in his hands. And from this, I call it the magnetic coral, comes this piercing light, laser light, that goes into the souls on these recliner lounges. And from that, these souls are healed. They're totally renewed. So, and they get up from the lounge and they're just like perfect. How else do I describe it? And then the magnetic coral folds back into this angel's hands and he exits the arena.
It almost sounds to me like heavenly energy healings, like heavenly Reiki.
Yes. That's exactly what it was. But what I understand when I was writing that, I'm just writing what I'm seeing. But what I understood subsequently is this is where souls are brought to be renewed from their maladies and their illnesses that are imposed by others, if that makes sense. So it wasn't a renewal for what they had done, but what others had done to them. So if I, for example, the way I understand it, so if I did something bad to you, if I gave you some bad medicine and that caused you considerable your physical and spiritual body a great deal of harm, then you are renewed from that. Those burdens are taken away. And the doer, that cause you that pain and suffering, then I need to suffer the consequences of those actions. But those burdens are taken away. That was my understanding of what the healing arena does. Quite magnificent.
And then after the healing arena, you talk about the nether regions.
Oh my goodness! If this again, this is what I saw. So I was taken down, and if you could imagine a desolate landscape of, like being burnt by fire, and the smell and the ash, they were taken through this area into these huge portals. So this big forbidding door opens up, and I enter, and I've got a guide here, so he's taking me through this area. And what I saw were these huge vortices, spinning vortices. And in the vortices were these entrapped souls that could, that were caught in these huge energy traps. And again, what I understand, it wasn't, this is not God's judgment for being a bad person, but rather these souls are entrapped by choice. So the errant power, lust, envy, greed, gluttony, wrath, the 7 deadly sins, if you will. So souls are entrapped by choice into these hellish vortices. And what I saw was like some were trying to escape, but pulled down by others to stay in these vortices of power. But surrounding each of these vortices were these beautiful angelic beings. And I remember asking, what are they doing? And what I understand is as soon as a soul is able to repent, to relinquish, lose that entrapment of choice, they are taken from these vortices and then nurtured under the guiding, loving hands as a father. So they're then taken away by these angelic beings. But to me, it was, if it wasn't a version of hell, it would frighten the pants off you.
I can understand. And then after the nether regions is the abode of reunion. What makes this region so special?
Oh, my goodness, that's another one. Let me describe what I saw. So I'm standing with the master soul, a guide, if you will, and looking over this expanse. And the expanse of like lawn or garden had all these souls on it. And next to the expanse were the mists, the mist of purgatory. And over these mists were all souls coming to visit, and they were attached by the silver cord. I go, well, what is this? But again, the abode of reunion is where when like earthbound people, us, when we sleep, our soul can venture over to this and meet up with other souls who guide and assist and help us. And the bridge is love. So if we have love connections to somebody who's passed over, when we sleep, the soul can go over, get nurtured, get advice, get support, and then of course, when the body wakes up, the soul returns to its host. But that was what I saw as the abode of reunion. So when we sleep, our souls can go visit someone we love to give us guidance and assistance.
Is this something that requires the attention of the living?
I think so, Victor. I think the key is to connect with love. In my recent experience with my mum, I know this to be true. We that love connection is so strong. Then we can, like, before we go to sleep, ask a question. You're like, Mum, how do I fix this? What do I need to do? And I think that's the key.
Absolutely.
Then we fly over these mists and get support. That's what I saw.
Absolutely. One of the lovely regions you share is the School for Children. Why is this place so special?
Victor, how do I describe this? When this beautiful I walked into this beautiful building, well, got taken into this beautiful building, and if you could imagine alabaster, marble, colonnades, that sort of building. And when I walked into this edifice, the love I felt was just totally extraordinary. I can even feel it now. I got chills. And in this place is where children, young souls that have passed early from the earth realm, are brought to nurture by the Father through the love of the Father, that no child is left to wallow. Every child that is taken in their younger years from the earth is nurtured to their prime by a love so profound that I can barely describe it to you. And that what I saw going through this building was, younger souls, but they're also little fledglings, young babes in arms, and they were nurtured by these beautiful awaiting souls and brought to their prime in the heavenly realm. So it was a school for children.
And that would give great comfort to those bereaved parents who have lost children.
Absolutely, Vic, absolutely. As I meant, if I could better describe the love I felt when I walked into this building, it was extraordinary. And so for your listeners out there that have, God forbid, that the grief one would feel, but to know that young soul is so nurtured in the love of the Father, I can barely describe it to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell us about the Great Hall of Learning.
Oh, my goodness. And again, same, these buildings are edifices. They are magnificent marble alabaster, that sort of construction, large stairways and colonnades. So I get taken into this hall of learning. It's like, I guess, akin to the Akashic Records. So where all knowledge past and present resides to be able to access by souls in need. So you're able to go in. This main character, Athar, was taken into this building, and he was shown knowledge that would help him progress for his future involvement, for what he wanted to heal others because of the distress he suffered in his life. He said, I want to help people. So he was taken into this hall of learning and shown knowledge of both past and the future, which he was able to access.
My guest is Stephen Chong. His book, The Afterlife, A Journey To. We'll be back with more after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, Stephen Chong. His book is entitled The Afterlife, A Journey To. So we were talking about this various regions that you had seen and experienced and had come through to you. And there's even a school for guardian angels that you call the Spirit Guide School. Who becomes these guides and what do they learn?
That's a very good question. I tell you, Victor, what I saw. So again, taken into one of those beautiful buildings I mentioned before, and like it was like a big lecture hall, and these souls were being instructed by master souls or angels, if you will, on how to become guardian angels. So, and what I understand, everybody has a guardian angel or two, and they are instructed specifically on how to be guardian angels, I guess. And they were the main characters were, through the instructions that they received, were able to transit across back down to characters and beings on Earth to help them out, to guide them, to save them from trouble. But that was what the school was there for, to instruct guardian angels on how to be good guardian angels.
And were the teachers that learned or studied in this school, were they actually all angels, or were some of them actually human souls that were evolving?
That's again a good question. What I saw was a master guardian angel. Who an ancient soul who'd been guardian to many beings on Earth. So don't ask me time frames. I didn't see any of that. But this, I guess, just called him a master, and he was the one instructing these other souls in how to perform their duties.
Now, you had mentioned earlier about the laws of heaven and earth. You had mentioned about the law of forgiveness as being a very important one. Please give us some other examples of how these laws apply in life and afterlife.
Let me pick a couple, Victor. Number one's a good place to start. Fear not, you are never without the love of the Father. And if we know that, it releases, it takes away that fear, doesn't it? To know that the Heavenly Father is with us at all times. We are never absent His love.
Absolutely.
Let me give you another one. Associated with that. Here we go. Number 7. In your life review, all shall be revealed. No thought or action insignificant. All remembered to record. Now, wrap one's head around that.
Now, let me ask you something. Let me just ask one thing. When we clear that life review, is the slate cleaned, or is it just lessons learned and then you move on to the next?
Move on. Yes. No, it's no. That's my understanding. It doesn't wipe the slate clean. We still have to undergo to evolve. I mean, what I saw, Victor, was there were souls that were like resident. You could stay where you were, and that was perfectly okay by the Father. Yeah, you were totally loved by these heavenly angelic beings. But if you wish to evolve, if you chose to evolve, you needed to experience. And remember, in heaven, as I understand it, this is not time-based. That we evolve through experience. So the soul chooses then to evolve through the different levels, to release the burdens of lifely trials. So you have cleansed, in other words. So to move, there was an instance which I recall, the main character, Athar, is standing on the precipice, and he's looking across this great chasm, and he sees the gates, the pearly gates, these beautiful, bright, open, totally open gates. And he's looking at these gates and going, well, I would like to go there, you know. I can't go, I'm not going back. It was too painful. I'm not going back there. I go forward, but he's looking into this chasm. And he goes, if I take the next step, I'm down in this crevice. So he takes a leap of faith and he moves forward. And, of course, there's a bridge there that links him to the other side. And this leap of faith enabled him to move into the next level of heaven, if you will.
Is there one law of heaven and earth that you really resonate with personally?
Oh, that's a good question. The one that stands out, Victor, is number 4. I look at them here. I've got them listed in front of me. And number 14 says, lead thou me on. And to me, that's just totally profound. You know, we put our hands in the Father's hands to know that he's going to take us where we're meant to be. We trust implicitly that the Father is there. We know that when we call upon him and his angelic forces, that we are in his guiding hands. That to me is one of the most profound.
Now, I have to ask you a question. I'm playing the feminist advocate right now. You say the Father and him. Is the Father actually masculine, or is it without gender?
I use that by it's a good question. I use that by limitation of language.
Okay. All right.
Yes. No. This is the Father and the Mother.
Father and the Mother. That's good.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, what did you learn about yourself as you wrote this?
Oh, now therein lies another really interesting question. And I mentioned before, Victor, that in this past week I've lost my blessed mother, and what it's meant is, see, this book taught me so many things. So I had not understanding and knowledge of what happens to us when we pass on. Even at that stage, I have no fear. In the passing, I know where some good things and some naughty things too, but I know where I go. But now having my mum pass, who was, as I mentioned before, a blessed soul that I'm so grateful for the knowing, I know exactly where she's gone. I know exactly where she is in the heart, and I can access that love all the time. So that's, to me, such a profound, and it's now experiential. I can feel and experience it rather than just know it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And as we both know, grieving and bereavement is unique to each and every individual. There's no right way or wrong way. But the message that you're bringing is that in that grief, there's comfort that we can connect with those who have passed.
Absolutely. No doubt. And to know that the love, see, love is the bridge and cannot be undone as long as it remains strong and true. So that love links us to that soul who's passed over. And they're there all the time. So one can access that love when life gets a bit tough, as it has its want. We just connect into that love that is there all the time, and we listen and feel for its response.
Absolutely. I have to share that I have total compassion for what you're going through right now with the loss of your mother. My mother passed in January of 2020. And a very interesting thing happened a couple of weeks after she passed. I was having a moment of rather intense grief. And I started feeling the sensation as if someone were placing their hands above my head on my scalp and gently massaging my scalp. And I knew that touch. It was my mother's touch.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, how good is that? I've got to tell you, that exact same experience happened to me. I kid you not.
No,
I'm sitting after Mum passed, I'm sitting in meditation, and I'm open to I'm accessing the grief. I'm saying, if there's a grief in there, let it come out, and tears will fall. And I felt her hands clasp me like over the ears, and like rub or just hold me there. And it was same as you, same, most profound, beautiful experience.
Absolutely. My guest, Stephen Chong, his book, The Afterlife, A Journey to... Stephen, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Oh, thank you, Victor. Probably the best way to access this is via my website, www.stephenchong.com.au, and that's Stephen with a PH. There's links to the Afterlife, The Journey to on there, as well as the other books if people so wish, or they can just get on to Amazon. There's the ebook is available, and as mentioned before, the paperback is coming out in a couple of weeks. So they're the best places they can access the work. And if people want to drop me a line, there's email links there, so they can contact me if they wish. Happy to do it.
My gratitude on behalf of the listeners for joining us and sharing this story and the very, very positive and loving message that it brings.
Victor, I thank you very much and much appreciate you having me on your program.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.